program will begin shortly. Launch sequence. Activate. Warning, the following content is not politically correct. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the channel today, everyone. I'm Sarah Higdon. This is Transform to Freedom. So we were off last week, just having a nice day off. It was St. Patty's Day, and so I hope y'all enjoyed yourself. It's a little bit weird when those types of things are on Mondays, right? So, because you want to go out and hang out with people and drink some green beer and whatnot, but it's a Monday, so you really can't do much because most people have to work the next day or whatnot. So it is a little bit weird because most people aren't really doing as much. It's always better when things are on weekend. Actually, a Cinco de Mayo on a weekend. Can somebody check that for me? That one might be a better one. And then if it's on a Sunday, we may just not have the show on Monday because, well, how's it going? Yeah. So, but yeah, other than that, I was hoping to have some news to share with everybody today, but it doesn't look like what I thought was going to be happening today, what I was kind of preparing for last week a little bit was is not here. So I can't let this news out of the bag yet until I get confirmation as to when things are going, when things are going to happen. But some good news, some stuff's going on, some stuff's coming up. So yeah, hopefully I can share that stuff for you pretty soon. And Cinco de Mayo is on a Monday. So Cinco de Mayo and St. Patty's Day are both on Mondays this year. That's not fun. That's not fun. But yeah, so moving on, we talked about a little. The last show we did was a few weeks ago. We were talking about this the continuing resolution that was going on in Congress, basically funding the entire government at levels of the Biden levels. And what it basically does is erodes the Doge cuts and everything like that happens because the courts have said that they had to spend the money in February, and so it would beg to reason that if Congress appropriates money to an area of government, that money still has to be spent, whether it's on what whether it's on staff or what, but they need to cut the funding to those areas so that way to make those cuts permanent. And only, Congress has the power of the purse. And so they have to do something. Now there's things that could be done. And it's kind of one of these situations where I'll believe it when I see it type situations, we've seen, during the Tea Party days, everybody ran on lowering government spending. That was the whole idea behind the Tea Party. Then we get a bunch of people elected to Congress. Those people we get elected to Congress, then get into the swamp and don't start cutting the spending that they said they were going to. They start voting for massive spending bills. And so at that time, it's, well, we don't have the executive branch. We don't have the executive branch. So, because that was when Obama was in office. So no matter what we pass, we can't cut anything because the president will never sign anything. So we have to play ball and try to get what we can get. Then move into Trump's first 2 years in office, in 2016 or 2017, 2018. Guess what? They had the entire Congress. They had both the legislative branch and the executive branch, and they still didn't cut spending. In fact, in Trump's first term, he increased the deficit by $8 trillion. Now, a lot of that did come from the COVID era. It came in 2020 when COVID hit, and they did, the CARES Act, which basically they said it was an utter failure. And the, it's all this, it's all that going on. Now, obviously, we know Thomas Massie took a lot of heat for standing up against even this bill. Now, actually, let me go back. What they can do is they can start passing rescissions where they start cutting the funding. They start pulling away the funding. They have to pass bills to actually pull the funding away from what they've allocated for this year in this continuing resolution. Again, I'll believe that when I see it. I've never seen anything like that happen. Nothing really has happened like that. So I'll believe it when I see it. Now, the advantage there is, I guess, that it only needs 50 votes in the Senate to pass, so they don't need any Democrat support to pass rescission bills. That's the same with reconciliation bills. And so we're looking now, and then apparently they're starting to put together the budget, which is going to be due in September. But, you don't really have that much time. You have 2 years, but typically what happens is you get to this point, you right now that's, hey, we don't have, we need the runway to get in. And then in September, when they're looking to pass the bill, is, we have midterms next year. We don't really want to risk our position, by voting for bills that may not be beneficial in our district, or our district may not see to be beneficial. So those cuts never come because it's one thing after another. And like I said, yeah, you'll get midterms next year. And then that's the thing, is nothing's going to get passed next year with the midterms going on. And so then you start to see that it's very unlikely. We'll see if they do it again. I'm highly doubtful, highly skeptical. And, we talked about it on the last episode that Thomas Massie and Rand Paul are the only two people that have actually stood up against this. And even with this, the CR, the Democrats were playing like they were not going to pass the bill in the Senate. They were not going to let this continuing resolution pass, even though it was Biden's budget. They were saying, they were saying, we're not going to let this pass, and it was playing this political theater game. But Thomas Massie called it and was like, hey, it's going to pass no matter, like, they're playing this is all just political theater. And then he was right. So this is what he said on March 11th.
Massey here. I thought you'd like to know about the fake fight that's going on in the House of Representatives right now over this CR. They're trying to pitch it as a conservative CR versus liberal Democrats. And even the Democrats are going along in the House. But let me tell you why that's a fake fight. They plan to pass it with all Republicans here in the House. But after we leave town, the Democrats are going to vote for it in the Senate. That's right. They're going to need about 8 Democrat senators to vote for this thing over in the Senate. That means that this deal has already been cut, that Mike Johnson has cut a deal with the Senate Democrats, Senate leadership, and even Hakeem Jeffries. He's in on this so that they can pitch their fake fight here in the House. Now, why am I so certain this is going to pass in the Senate when it gets over there with 8 Democrats or however many Democrats they need? Well, Mike Johnson is sending us home a day early. We're going to vote on this thing and skip town. If you thought there was really a threat of them not passing it in the Senate, why would you leave town? The other thing that's going on is the Democrats have a retreat, an off-site retreat, where they're going to get together and party and have, guest speakers and stuff. And that starts tomorrow and runs through Thursday and Friday. Now, you think they're not going to let this thing pass? What would happen if, let's say, the Freedom Caucus decided to take the conservative stance on this CR and oppose it? Well, they would be about 30 or 40 votes short here in the House, the Republicans would. But Hakeem Jeffries wouldn't be able to pretend, along with Mike Johnson, in this fake fight, that this is a conservative versus liberal battle in the House. And he would just hand over at least 40 Democrats. And once you get to 40 Democrats, it'd probably be a whole lot more Democrats. So that's what's going on. It's all a fake fight. You're going to find this out when it goes over to the Senate and you have Democrats in the Senate voting for it. Now, here's the other thing a lot of people aren't telling you about this bill. In the FRA, stands for Fiscal Responsibility Act. I'm not saying it was that responsible, but in the FRA that passed a couple years ago under Kevin McCarthy, the deal that was cut between myself and others on the Rules Committee was that if you will guarantee a 1% cut in spending on any CR that goes past April 30th and put that into law, use the sequester language and put that into law, then we would raise the debt limit or suspend the debt limit for a period of time. I voted for this because a 1% cut seemed like a wonderful thing if they would go and do a CR for a full year, which seemed like almost a certainty at some point in the next 2 years. Well, here we are under Mike Johnson, and we've got the 1 year CR that they're going to do. It's actually a 6-month CR because we're already 6 months into this, and it's going to go past April 30th. It should trigger the sequester. But guess what? Mike Johnson's folks and lawyers have said, we're just going to ignore that. We're going to treat this continuing resolution as 12 appropriations bills or an omnibus for the purposes of this sequester because it goes all the way to September 30th. In other words, they're saying this really isn't a CR for the purposes of that deal we cut 2 years ago. We're going to call this basically an omnibus in CR clothing, so we don't have to follow the law, the agreement that we did before. Now, that's pretty disingenuous if you ask me. It's even more disingenuous to try to say that, 2 years ago, Massey was fiscally irresponsible because he voted to raise the debt limit. No, we got a deal there, and then Mike Johnson has broken the deal because he's not being conservative. I mean, this was obvious, as that cap.
So that's, I mean, I'm cutting that a little bit short, but you can go watch that. It's a great explanation, right? Because, yeah, you're right, Eddie. Like, Paul and Massey don't. It's a travesty that they're not getting more respect for their opinions. And what was interesting was this actually wasn't like December or September. When was that? November-ish timeframe when they were voting on the. December, right? When they were voting on the 3-month CR back in December, because a lot of conservatives actually came out in support of Thomas Massey when Donald Trump attacked him. But this is the line of reasoning that some other more conservative influencers are trying to make against Massey, is that he voted to raise the debt limit under Biden, right? Hey, Jen. And so because he raised the debt limit under Biden, then he's fiscally irresponsible when it comes to Biden, and he plays with Democrats more. And it was actually a conservative House who he wanted budget cuts. He made a deal. He played the game. And now he's getting burned for playing the game, as we all want, as everybody wants him to do, because he will make a deal and then they'll go back on the word that they made. And because, yeah, this CR, they're just changing the language to say that it's not a CR and it's actually just a spending bill, because the Massey rule would be triggered in April if they didn't do that, which you would think that Mike Johnson would welcome that rule, the 1% cut across the board, to take place, if they're really concerned about spending, and they're really looking at cutting the spending like we've talked about, and I'll believe it when I see it, if they're really going to do that, then you would think that they would let that 1% rule take place, which is one of the black pills that's showing that I don't think that they're really going to do it. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Jen. Jen says the debt ceiling is merely a suggestion. I mean, it is. It holds their hand a little bit, because they do have to, if it comes up, they have to vote to raise it. But the problem is if we default on our debt, then it becomes extreme. It's like when you default on your credit card, you actually end up paying a lot more in interest. So our debt rate goes up, and so we can't really spend as much money. So they're never gonna let us default on a payment like that, because it can cause catastrophic incidences on the world stage to our credit rating, and it's ridiculous. Yeah, but so they're always gonna pass to raise the debt ceiling. Both sides don't want to, be the side that stops us from raising the debt ceiling. But it's like the fact that they don't let this 1% sequester go into effect, it really just shows that it's kind of signaling that they're really not going to go back and work and try to cut the debt. And we're going to be back we're going to be in September, and we're going to be trying to cut the deal, and then it's going to be we have to make this deal. We have to get through next year so that we can the midterms are next year, so we need to get through there. And if you watch this video, Massey was right, just as he predicted. He's laying it out there to what is going on behind the scenes and how it always works. History continues to repeat itself when it comes to these kinds of spendings. Says it passed 62-38 in the Senate. As I predicted 3 days ago, Senate Democrats carried this across the finish line because it's basically a continuation of the Schumer, Biden, Johnson 24 omnibus. 10 Democrats voted for it. So he said 8. They needed 10. They needed 9. They got 10. The one Senate Republican was Rand Paul that voted against it. And Rand Paul didn't get the same heat as Massey got, but I think it's because these types of bills originate in the House, and Massey is the one person that will stand against it. But it was, like I said, it was nice to see a lot of conservatives out there kind of take it, because Trump attacked Massey like he did when Massey stood up against the CARES Act, and look how that was a massive failure bill, and Massey was the only person that stood up against that. That's when he was called a third-rate grandstander by Trump. He was called a grandstander for what's going on with this bill. And it's like, if Trump's plan, and Massey's saying, if Trump's plan is to cut spending, then Mike Johnson's not pushing the Trump plan. Like, what Massey wants is closer to what Trump campaigned on than what's being pushed through this House. I wonder what the Jen's asking. I wonder what our U.S. FICO score rating is. It's probably like 400. No, it's probably. I mean, obviously they don't use FICO score rating. We have a AAA rating, which is the best a country can have. But it's because we always pay our debt back. We always pay on time. We always pay off our interest. We always pay because, see, that's the thing, is we always pay because the Fed can just go print money and pay off the debt, which causes inflation. But it's they will never default on it because they can just go further into. They basically borrowing money again from themselves to pay off this debt. So that's the update there. I know we talked about that for a little while. One of the other things we talked about on here before was potentially the signaling to officially shut down the Department of Education and return education to the states. And Trump signed it. Trump signed it last week. So that's a big deal. It's good news. Obviously, there's now this disingenuous influencer campaign on the left where they're like, the Trump, the Republicans and don't want they want to stop education. They want to defund education. They don't want people to be educated because they want this society to be stupid. And it's just disingenuous because they're not defunding education. In fact, they're just defunding the bureaucracy, the administrative state that funds that goes towards education. Instead of that money going down and getting to the lowest levels and actually paying teachers to teach students, which they always complain that don't get paid enough, instead of paying for the education, they're paying the ever-growing administrative state, which has grown. Like, the Department of Education doesn't educate anyone. So it's since its existence, the quality of education has only gone down in this country. And so this was a big step in this. So this is what Trump said when he signed that bill.
Today, we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all. Today, we take a very
ST Johnson 857 says he ain't going to be able to cut spending until he fixes the wars in Israel and Ukraine. I mean, that's yeah. But then I don't even know if I have it in here right now. We didn't talk about it, but now it's looking like, the neocon propaganda that he wants to push war for in Yemen. Going after quote pirates, but then all you see online is the neocon war propaganda that we're going after Iranian state funders of state-funded terrorism, which is exactly what got us into Iraq, really what got us into Afghanistan, other than 9/11, and really what's kept us in that region for so long. It's actually one of the reasons why we're supporting Israel in the fight against Hamas, because it's a fight against Iran. It's a proxy war against Iran, right? So what ends up happening is the military industrial complex is always hungry. They're always going to get their money. And so you're right. We can but what's going to happen is we draw, we fix the wars in Israel, and we stop funding Israel, we stop funding Ukraine, and the military industrial complex is pushing for more conflict in other places to keep their bankroll going. So when it was like immediately after we announced that we were ending our funding in Ukraine, that money goes to Yemen. It's yeah. Yeah, Jen, it all went downhill when they introduced Common Core education to our country. It was supposed to be better for students, but that's what central planning does, right? So central planning of anything, especially education, when you have this one standardized testing, they teach the test. They don't actually teach. They teach you what to think, not how to think, and so they teach to those standardized tests instead of actually teaching kids trades, right? They took the trades out of schools. They took the stuff that you can actually use on a daily basis. Common Core didn't, yeah, it really did. But that was already after years and years of declining education, because Common Core was Bush era, early 2000s, right? Which yeah, it really, it did send a lot of It was very poor. But again, yeah, that's standardized. You're standardizing the way that you teach students, and every child is different. And so but according to Common Core, teachers didn't even have to know the information. They just had to read from a book at that point, right? So yeah, exactly. Regurgitating, not educating. Yeah, Eddie, you're right. It took the learning out of the process. But yeah, no government-run agency is run with efficiency. You mentioned the Park Service. You're right, but look at even I think it was Trump or somebody talked about it this week, how they support like the U.S. Postal Service. So the USPS would run on a deficit every year, and it's worse quality. It's not as efficient, and it's worse quality than FedEx and UPS. If we privatized it, if it was run by a private organization, it might be a little bit more. Actually, they're all pretty comparable in terms of price, and it would be more efficient. It would be better. Same. I mean, look at Amtrak. Amtrak, I believe, runs at a loss, and it's like the slowest train that you can think of around the world. I think like I joked about this one day. Like if you got like if Tesla or if you got some like SpaceX working on high speed rail, the rail system, our trains, you could probably get really fast speeds on rail and be very, very safe and efficient. But they don't want that. They want this government, this old government system that's garbage, and that's what, and it doesn't function as well as it should because there's no innovation when it's government. Competition breeds innovation. So when it's government run, there is no competition. So yeah, now obviously, Randy Weingarten. See, this is what's interesting because she basically supported. A few months ago, we talked about this where she kind of supported this plan to shut it down because the local school boards and all that stuff already teach stuff. Like the local school boards already are the ones that make the decisions of what happens, but they have a bloated bureaucracy. So she basically, in some ways, makes Trump's point. So here's what she says here.
Randy, just tell us, what is your biggest concern when it comes to essentially shutting down the Department of Education?
So thanks for having me. And the biggest concern is all the opportunity gaps that the federal government provides through the Department of Education. The federal education role is limited. There's no, except for the Department of Defense schools, which are not run from the Department of Education, or the Bureau of Indian Affairs schools that are not run by the Department of Education. It doesn't control any schools. In fact, it's the states that control schools. So if President Trump doesn't like what's happening in education, it's the states and local school boards that do it. What the department does is there's about $100 billion. So a kid who has disabilities, a kid who is poor, a kid who's going to Head Start, a kid who's in a rural area, kid who is in a career tech ed program, a kid who gets a Pell Grant, a kid who's limited English proficient. Every single one of those kids, which are essentially most of our kids in public schools, they get basically 10% of every dollar that's spent on them is from the Department of Education.
Yeah, so
that's what I am worried about.
So she makes the point for him, though. So 10% is from the Department of from the Department of Education. That money's not going away. Like she's making this point. She actually makes the point for him, right? That the Department of Education doesn't do anything. So it's a bloated bureaucratic organization that's not actually really doing anything for education. She's talking about the money, but that money is set to go down to the states so that they can actually put it into practice into people's hands. Think about how many millions that you're paying just to operate the Department of Education, to not, as she would basically just put it, to not do anything that actually affects children's education. Like, she makes the point for you. Where was it? Do you think Linda McMahon is qualified to run the Department of Education? Here's the thing. I think she was the CEO of a massive corporation. So I think that she has that skill. I also think that she is qualified to shut down the Department of Education. Yes, I do. I don't think you need to be like...
Randy, just tell us, what is your...
I don't think you need to... All you need to be able to do is run a business or run one of these organizations. You don't need to be like an educator to do that. Yeah, the money, you're absolutely right. The money doesn't matter if our education doesn't improve. Like, in the military, we had this thing called the tooth to tail ratio. And it was something, so the tooth ratio is how many warfighters, or how many infantrymen, people that are actually out, or the front lines fighting, and how much how long the tail is behind them to support that. And it's something like, there's something like 1,000 people that it takes to support one warfighter. Like, that's how big. And so that's like, to streamline that out, they started putting like logistics and stuff more forward to help that. Now, military is not a good example with how it works here, because you need a lot of that logistical strength in the back. But this is about a bloated bureaucracy that the people that are at the top are just not really, the administrators are not benefiting. Most of these administrators are DEI, like implementers, and you have the counselors, you have all the stuff that does nothing, that actually does nothing in the classroom to help these students out. It's the people that are running like social emotional learning coordinators and all of that's taking up a lot of this money. And that's why everybody needs to get involved in their local school board, in your state board of educations, because that's not going to change with shutting down the Department of Education, because the Department of Education is just as Randy basically said, it doesn't do anything when it comes to children's education. But here's Linda McMahon actually talking about what they're going to do.
I think the president was very clear. The outward-facing programs that are going to be affecting students there's not going to be any defunding for those programs. When he talked about student loans, that would be going to the Small Business Administration, and also then the programs for students with disabilities will more than likely rest in HHS, which, by the way, is where they began. I think we're looking at putting things in different departments where they can operate very efficiently, as we look at how we can shut down the Department of Education.
Do they not operate efficiently now?
Not as well as they should be. As a matter of fact, the president campaigned on the fact that he wanted to close down the Department of Education. And what we saw with our scores recently with the NAEP, which is our country's report card, I mean, it's unacceptable where education is in our country today. And so the Department of Education does not educate one child. It does not establish any curriculum in any states. It doesn't hire teachers. It doesn't establish programs. Mm-hmm. What it is more of a pass-through of funding, which is appropriated by Congress, by the way. And so we want to make sure that funding continues in departments where it needs to be, but at the same time, give states the opportunities to be innovative and creative with their teaching.
So it is really interesting to watch that, right? You watch the Randy Weingarten clip first, and then you watch that, and they basically say the same thing. Linda McMahon addresses the Randy Weigarten, like Randy's concern about shutting down like projects, like money going to those with disability needs and everything like that. It's not going to change. It's going back to the health. It's going back to HHS where it started in the first place. And they are going to continue to pass through and fund the stuff like and at that point you realize, yeah, they literally just said the same thing. They literally said that I mean, Randy would never say that they're not operating efficiently because she's the head of the largest teachers union, and that's her job, is to make it seem like the teachers union and the teachers are the best there is and the best there ever will be, and we can't change anything like that. She's also one of the ones that pushed heavily during 2020 and everything like that to keep it was funny that, you know, she pushed to keep schools closed, and then eventually said that tried to make the claim that she didn't say to keep schools closed. And so but yeah, I mean, she's trying to fight this game, but it's hard to fight a game when she's agreeing with what the Trump administration is doing. It's hard to, you know, advocate to keep this open when and at the end of the day it's looking like you agree. So okay, one of the stories that I was not able to talk about, I didn't, because I wasn't on last week, was the incidence of swatting. So a large swath of conservative commentators were getting swatted, and this is there's a lot of stuff going on here between then and now, what we're seeing with what we're going to talk about in a second. But this is what I mean when I say the political violence has continued to escalate, and it's really coming from the one side, right? You're seeing a lot of it's almost feeling like 2020, like the riots of 2020 all over again, but different tactics. So, I mean, I don't know what the exact numbers were by the end of this. How many conservative figures had ended up getting swatted. And if you don't know, I'll just explain it to you. If you don't know, swatting is when somebody calls the police from your location and saying that they're from they're you, or there's somebody at your house, and there's some sort of, you know, murder situation going on, or there's a hostage situation going on, or something along those effects. Basically, so that the police come with guns drawn to kick in your door. And in all reality, swatting is attempted murder, because what they're trying to do is, it's in the middle of the night, get, you know, police officers amped up, get you amped up, probably in your bed. And so you're going to be, you know, you don't know what's going on. If you go to the door, even with your hands raised, I mean, there has been a person that was shot and killed by police because police thought they had a gun. It was actually the wrong house. The person swatted the wrong house. And it ended up in a tragedy. And so what they're trying to do is send people, and again, they don't really care if it's you, because, well, they also know that conservatives have guns at their house. You know, they protect their homes. And so if they don't know police are coming, they don't think that, you know, they have no reason for police to be kicking in their door. It could create a very dangerous situation where, you know, bullets are flying both ways, and it puts police in danger. And that's the problem, is the people that are doing this don't care about police either. They're the all cops are bastard people. So they don't respect police that way either. And so they don't care about what's going on with police officers. They don't care if they're put in the line of duty. So it's really, it's an attempted murder situation. And when it starts to happen against a large number of conservative figures, then you start to see it's starting to ramp up to be like a fourth wave or a fourth generation style war tactic, terrorism tactic, to try to silence people, get people to shut up, stop talking about issues. It becomes part of a domestic terror type operation. And what's bad is, you know, it only takes one person to execute this. I mean, now whoever's doing it is going to, you know, with the administration that there is now, DHS is hunting them down. I know the FBI, I saw just a post just before I came on, the FBI had contacted one of the people again. So they're actively engaging into who possibly did this, who's doing this. I personally, just being a public figure who sometimes has controversial takes, and with some of the stuff I have coming up, that could really piss some people off on one side. I talked to my local sheriff's office and get on the same page. They thanked me for calling them in regards, and so we have a plan of action if somebody calls in one of these things on my house, and any content creator I would advocate to, whether you think you're a big name commentator or not. One of the people that had gotten swatted was I only knew his content because he was speaking out against the stuff in North Carolina, because he lives in Western North Carolina, speaking out against that type of stuff and how the government was failing them there. I'm like, I went up there and I covered that. I better, you know, so it wasn't like one of these big, like, controversial figures. I was like, so yeah, I would say any content creator should be talking to their local police force, just letting them know what's going on. I mean, looking at some people, somebody said that they did that, and that they talked to that, like, none of the police officers even knew what was going on in terms of the online space. So they were like blindsided. They didn't understand. They didn't know that there was a mass situation of swatting happening across the country. Yeah, Tim Pool got swatted quite a few times, and that's the other thing is, so like with Tim, I think it was after the first one, especially after the first one, they coordinated with local law enforcement. So, you know, what happens, law enforcement has to come out to check these things out. They can't just like assume that there's that it's a swatting call, but they can verify that that it is you calling, or that, you know, that what's going on there is calling. So like, I could, you know, if there was a swatting thing coming from my house, if there's a call coming from my house, or they're saying they're coming from my house, the police can call me. So they know to call me first. So they know to call, and then they have to come and check it out, but at least we can make it the safest possible situation that you could think of. I can put my dogs away, because that's one of the things too, is I'm worried about police coming in through my door with my dogs and them not being put away. And so there's a lot of that stuff, right? And that's a lot of what I would be concerned about. But this is ramped up. So that started happening, and now we are seeing, just today, an incendiary device was found at the Austin Tesla dealership. So in Austin, Texas, there was incendiary devices found. But that's just the latest. I mean, we have this is now becoming domestic terrorism. Lighting the worst is they're lighting they're blowing up, engulfing Teslas on fire, especially at the dealerships. You're having but then you're also having like mom and pops, people, like just everyday Tesla drivers, getting harassed on the street, being called a Nazi, and it's like, you know, like reality check, y'all. Like, you know, most of the people that own Teslas right now are like environmentalist leftist, or they're at least left-leaning. Like, most of them are left-leaning. Most of the people that still own Teslas, like, they're not going to sell their car just because Elon Musk is helping the Trump administration. And so most of the people that you're harassing are on your side with most stuff. All you're doing is pushing them away and making more people not like you, hate you, and be conservative. But this is like, yeah, this is them on flames. That's Las Vegas, like on the 18th. Like, that's one. I mean, they make electric cars. I mean, I wonder what this does to the environment, right? So all the environmentalists who have pushed electric cars for how long because it's good for the environment are now blowing up electric cars and sending carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. What? Because they don't like Elon Musk? Because they don't like that Elon's working with the government to help make it more efficient? Like, come on. Like, this is, but then this is the state we're in.
Taking to the streets or the parking lots.
Tonight, the FBI and ATF now investigating multiple cases of possible arson targeting Teslas and Cybertrucks.
This dramatic video shows multiple cars in flames. Police say the attacker used Molotov cocktails. It's the latest in more than a dozen instances of arson and vandalism targeting Tesla.
The same suspect shot more Teslas with a gun. Tesla Cybertrucks were set on fire in Kansas City, and earlier this month, shots fired at a Tesla dealership in Oregon. Cybertrucks on fire in Seattle.
Wow, you guys like petty acts of domestic terrorism, huh? Jim, they're taking to the streets.
Like, that is the reaction that the Daily Show audience is giving, cheering for this type of stuff happen. And even the Daily Show host is like, kind of like, what? Like, you guys really like domestic terror? Like, this is, again, it's giving, and then you see like all the influencers on the left online. You see all the leftist influencers online talking about oh, they're trying to compare it to like the Bud Light boycott and all this stuff. Like, they don't understand, like, there's a difference between like not buying something and then like blowing shit up. Thank you for the super chat. Jen McMahon says it's weird to see how far these lefties freak out over inanimate objects like red hats, Tesla cars, and Cybertrucks. They're so broken. I wouldn't be surprised if they drive a Volkswagen. No, you're right. No. They give these symbols so much power over them. Like, they think that we look at these symbols as power, and it's not. And yeah, they probably are the type that are moving. There was this thing that they were like moving to Volkswagen. And if you know the history of Volkswagen, Volkswagen was what created by the Nazis, and they're the ones supporting that. So, like, I don't. The leftists are giving that 2020. Oh, it's mostly peaceful protests. It's, you know, the firebombing. It's the mostly peaceful firebombing. Throwing Molotov cocktails at stuff, but it's really not. It's not. And this is the thing: is all the, like I said, this article actually from the Blaze kind of encompasses what's going on. It's like mass leftist thugs cut off, harasses Tesla driver, a mother on her way to the doctor, and tells her this is a Nazi car. She's basically telling her story. Like, what happened when her car was cut off? The guy stopped in the middle of the road, approached her vehicle, and began berating her. Which, really funny though. These people don't know that, like, when you go next to a Tesla, they have the Sentry mode, which records you. So like when you go key a car, a Tesla, it records you. Like every single one of them is recording at all times. Like you can't. And so all of this is caught on camera because of the way that the cars are set up. Basically, yeah, this person, you need to sell your car. It's a Nazi car. You're driving it. You need to sell your car. Like, this is how if it was easy to just turn over a $60,000 car and find something that works, that's one thing. That's not a decision that everybody can make overnight, and I think it puts a lot of us in a hard position. Like almost all the people that I know that drive Teslas are driving Teslas because they bought them well before like Elon became enemy of the left, and they bought them because they were concerned about the environment, right? Yeah, no, Elon didn't make the salute. Like we talked about this when it happened. It was clearly not the salute, right? In context, he was clearly saying, "My heart goes out to you," and if you want to take that as the salute, then go back and watch during the election, when Tim Walz did the same thing twice in a row, the exact same gesture. Come on now. Yeah, the thing about Kid Rock shooting Bud Light though, he bought it. He bought his and shot his own property. That's not the same as harassing innocent people on the street. It's not the same as domestic terror, blowing up cars, other people's property. It's not the same. And now they're starting to figure out who some of these people are that are doing it. And obviously, some of it, but we are starting to see, and this is why the connection again, the connection back to 2020, when Antifa was trying to tie in with when Antifa, along with Black Lives Matter protesters, but I would say a lot of the destruction was Antifa trying to cause chaos in the streets, using critical race theory as their foundation, using critical theory in general as their foundation. What we do know now is, what I've talked about this before, that we know that Antifa has rebranded as Trantifa, and so every single person, it's really crazy that 3 of the charge, or I think it was 2 of the 3 that were charged in this in some of these attacks identified as trans. We're seeing this a lot more happen, where people who self-ID as trans are committing acts of violence in this type of way. And like I said, I think it's like this 4th generation warfare. I don't use the we're heading into a hot civil war lightly, but with all of this violence starting to stack up, with the domestic terror attacks on Teslas, the random acts of violence against just regular Tesla owners, the swatting instances against conservative commentators, not even just conservative, but just non-leftist commentators. The tactics are ramping up, and it's getting kind of crazy out there. And like I said, it's a good time for me to like bring up. I wrote an article about this, 2 years ago now, almost exactly 2 years ago, how progressives have co-opted the trans community to push their hateful ideology. We're seeing this a lot with these attacks. We're seeing this a lot just across the board. And obviously we know a lot, like actual trans people are not out here doing this type of stuff, not the people who just want to live their lives, that just want to blend into society. No, I think a lot of people are using the queer theory aspect of critical theory because they can self-ID into that aspect. They can self-ID into that cause to push their postmodern neo-Marxism. Whereas like in 2020, they needed the Black community to execute the violence. And when they were like, we're not going to do that, and they realized that they couldn't. And so that's kind of what we've been seeing this lead up to this. We've been seeing the Trantifa activists like starting to really escalate their attacks on things. And this does nothing to help trans people, but I don't think it's the actual trans community. They're using the trans community as a vehicle to push their ideology with zero regard that it brings on actual trans people. See, because what happens is T used to stand for transsexual, changed to transgender so that you can just self-ID in. Now they've been able to commandeer the community just by self-IDing, right? Into this umbrella term, the postmodern aspects allows progressives to then co-opt the trans moniker. They can now self-ID into an oppressed community so that officials are afraid to do anything against them for fear of being called bigots. And so they end up going through this stuff. Andy No has been great about reporting on this Trantifa cult that kind of sparked up where there was multiple murders linked to. Go check out Andy's stuff because he's talking a lot about this recently. But we're seeing it happen, and so it's not surprising to me that when you see a lot of this political violence start to happen, and it's very targeted this time. It's not so just riots like in 2020. It's very targeted, so it's getting more organized. 2020 was not organized. As it's getting more organized, and they are getting more organized, Antifa moving into Trantifa, as all of that is happening, we're starting to see just, again, it's 2020 all over again. And I don't think it's going to be a good time for a lot of people. I don't think it's going to be a good time, especially for trans people, because they're going to be, it's going to continuously be run out into the news. Yeah, Jen, you're right. The trans vegan murder cult. That's a whole crazy situation that I would actually have to bring Andy on and have him sit down and just lay it all out. Maybe I should do that. Ask him to come on. Me and Andy get along pretty well, so maybe he will. But like that whole situation's crazy, and we can talk about maybe we can talk about some of this too, as to why this whole thing is getting more and more violent, and why we're seeing it be so many people that are identifying as trans that are coming out and doing this. I don't think it has to do with the trans label or gender dysphoria. I think it has to do with transgenderism, the ideology. Has to do with queer theory as a whole being the basis, or critical theory in general being the basis of their belief system. The neo-Marxism, the postmodernism that they operate off of and that they believe is what's running this stuff. So yeah. I mean, because then it's not, then it's even crazier. So this is what's even funny too. This is not related because this is actually in Montreal. So two were arrested after a Tesla dealership in Montreal was vandalized, which a climate group took the responsibility. Please somebody explain to me how the company that started the era of electric vehicles and makes the best electric vehicles out there, and the best chargers out there, that everybody has to use Tesla chargers because they're everywhere. They have the best grid system, whereas our government tried to build a grid system and wasted a ton of money and didn't get anywhere on it. Thanks, Pete Buttigieg, right? But they're going into Tesla dealerships and destroying Teslas. This is what we talked about earlier. Like, how does climate change groups who once pushed electric vehicles, now they're attacking Tesla? I don't. Yep. No, that's what I wrote in that piece, Jen, is that they're going to use the trans community. So you're saying they're going to use the trans community is all dried up and then they're going to make the move. Yeah, they're going to, in that article I wrote that they will destroy the reputation. They will destroy any acceptance that the trans community has, and then they will just simply self-ID out, leaving the transsexuals to holding the bag, because this isn't like an ideology or an identity, really. It's just our lives. I guess it is part of your identity, but it's not like part of your political activism. It's not part of, it's just how we live to feel more comfortable in ourselves, right? It's crazy. Yeah, that they're taking this worldwide. Let's talk about this real quick before we end here. If you didn't know this weekend, you kind of got, if you were on Twitter and you follow some of these people, you kind of got an inside look as to how some of these influencers are easily bought. And so if you're listening to influencers' opinions on stuff and you really like their opinions on stuff, sometimes you got to think, are they actually saying the things that they believe? Because a lot of this happens a lot. Influencers get paid to post online. I mean, that's kind of their job in a lot of ways, to pay to post online. A lot of these organizations that pay to post online, they basically are like, you're getting paid to post the stuff that you would get paid for anyways, right? So you would, like, if the stuff that I would come on here and say anyways, they would pay me to say it, is basically the way that it should work. But when they start offering more and more money, some influencers are easily bought in this regard. And so when you start seeing people kind of making posts that kind of goes exactly the opposite of, and doesn't stand to reason, and kind of goes to the opposite of what they've spoken about before, you could start to question. A lot of people outed themselves as people who are easily bought, and their opinions are easily bought in over the last week with this stuff. So it was apparently in the Influenceable app, the company that is cutting checks on behalf of Big Soda. So there's this idea that MAGA, the administration is going to prevent people who are on SNAP benefits, so basically food stamps, from purchasing soda on government, on like you're using your SNAP card. I support. So this is the thing, is SNAP is supposed to be, it's not supposed to be for luxuries. If you want luxuries, it's about survival. It's not about luxuries. So it should motivate you to get off of them if you are on them. So I agree with cutting SNAP benefits. I agree with cutting SNAP benefits as a whole and letting nonprofit organizations do the work of feeding people. But that's, I don't know. That's a little bit different. That's that would be my ideal situation. that we cut this stuff as a whole, and then we use nonprofits to help fund people in need. It would be more efficient, as we talked about earlier, because government's not efficient at anything. But basically what we're giving them is a digital currency so that they can go buy junk food. And I think, I don't care if you eat junk food. I don't care if you want to, eat junk food, you want to drink soda, you want to get fat on your own dime. That's on you. But when you're asking me, or actually you're not even asking, you're demanding that I help pay for it with my taxpayer money. No, I'm not funding your luxuries. If we're talking about, if we're going to have a welfare system, it should be nutritious food, right? SNAP, the N in SNAP stands for nutrition. Like it's a nutritional supplement. And so I would say I wouldn't even want frozen foods to be part of it, but we also know that most people can't cook. So I'm gonna just, like, the frozen foods are right there on the edge because they don't really have a ton of nutrition, but they do get government. They do have some nutrition. There is nutritional value. There is zero nutritional value in soda, candy, chips, like those, like basically that soda aisle. When you walk down, it's got chips on one side, soda on the other side. That aisle, no good. No nutritional value. Like, if we're going to have the program, you shouldn't be, and this is the thing, is you shouldn't be able to eat better and eat better on SNAP benefits than somebody who's barely getting by but makes too much money to qualify for these benefits, who has to like tighten their budget and eat only have only the necessities. Otherwise, there's no incentive for somebody to get off the SNAP program, get a job and get off the SNAP program if then as soon as they get off, they can no longer get these luxuries. Like, there's a disincentive to get off of these programs. So soda ain't exactly Bacardi either. It's not any better. The amount of sugar that's in soda is enough. And this is the thing. What ends up happening, we're basically funding, your diabetes, and then you go on to and your health issues, and then you go on to Medicare and Medicaid, so that we're paying for your health care that you did by purchasing junk food on SNAP. It's a big soda. It's a what is it? Junk food industrial complex tied in with the medical industrial complex. And it's just like this big circle of money where they win, you lose because you're unhealthy, and they're not educating you to be healthy. Like, I would rather see some of this money pulled back from SNAP and go to educating people and how to cook for themselves, how to eat healthy at that. If you go on SNAP benefits, then, they're going to teach you how to actually eat healthy instead of eating a bunch of junk food so that you can actually be healthier. I think that's the thing, is like, they keep, like, you stay sick because you don't know any better. You don't know how to cook for yourself on a budget. Like, you see these posts online and it shows a shopping cart and it's got just junk food all in it, and it's like trying to feed yourself on $400 a week or something. And I'm like, I I feed myself on like $100 a week, and I eat just really healthy stuff. I eat pretty healthy stuff, and I eat out a couple times a week, but I don't go to like big restaurants. Okay. But it's like, it's just amazing what people think. You actually will eat a lot, like you will eat cheaper and healthier if you actually choose the healthy options, if you know how to cook. So yeah, but this is, yeah, so you see a lot of people just out of themselves to get paid. Now, I guess this Clown World account, it deleted its post after it got called out, because basically it's like, do people not realize, like, we see when like Project or Operation Mockingbird on the left is in full effect, because we do screenshots like this and say it's literally the same video, same words, same script, everything. They're just reading from a script. They are 100% getting paid to do this. We see the leftist politicians doing this a couple weeks ago. So if we see the leftist politicians doing this, don't you think we're going to see you doing this? And they basically had a script, almost it's all like the same. It's the same wording everywhere. These two accounts, neither one of these even live in the US. A new war on soda has begun, targeting purchases made through snaps. I don't believe it's the government's role to decide what people should or shouldn't eat. The last time the US government dove deep into the dietary guidance, the whole world ended up with questionable food pyramid. It's the champion the COVID-19 vaccine, safe and effective. Ian Miles Chong lives in Malaysia. I don't need anybody who doesn't live here telling me what my tax money should be paying for. He doesn't get a say. Neither apparently this account doesn't live in the US either. And then they were trying to use Trump as Trump likes Coke, like to make it seem like this is anti-MAGA. Try to play with your emotions that like this is like an anti-MAGA situation. Yeah, seeing SNAP benefits at any fast food like McDonald's and stuff like that is absolutely nuts and crazy. But I will say, per meal, I'm gonna say it depends. Like a McDonald's might be more nutritious per meal than something in the frozen food aisle at the grocery store. I don't know. I'd have to look at that. I'm not confirming that, but yeah, it is. I don't think that fast food restaurants should be, because again, that's a luxury. Like that is a luxury. You shouldn't be paying for it. So then Nick actually got the whole situation, and you can see the entire campaign right here. All the talking points that they're basically regurgitating. Like, I mean, people like Ian Miles Chong, though, they have no values. Like will do anything for money. They'll flip their opinion within a second because they have no honor, integrity. They have no actual opinions on this stuff. It's whatever will make them money. And Ian was one of the people like pushing a lot of stuff in the Gamergate scandal. I would say it was alleged that I guess he admitted that he called the police, sent the police over to somebody's house one time. Now it's not confirmed. I couldn't confirm whether that was swatting, but he's also been alleged to have called in different swatting instances. I wouldn't put it past him. I don't know if I can say. No, Ian Miles Chong has never even stepped foot in the United States. He lives in Malaysia. Malaysia. and then constantly talks about our system. Like, apparently some of these people were offered like $1,000 per post. I mean, it's not worth your $1,000. Like, $1,000 is not worth your integrity, but you can see how low some of these people's prices are to just not even think for themselves and post something that they don't really believe in. And apparently what it is too is the lobbying firm Ameribev, obviously they're the ones that the big soda kind of operates under. They kind of lobby for the big soda companies. They apparently, there was something that it came out like somewhere between 25 and 40% of Coke's profits come from SNAP benefits. So of course they don't want to see that dry up. Of course they don't. So, but I mean, Nick actually brings up a good point here too, is because they will do different. I mean, this is an example of something that, hey, like, listen, I could see Chad Prather wanting people to go see Sound of Freedom. Obviously, he's getting paid to push this, but he would probably push it anyways. I had no issues with this type of stuff. A lot of people have issues because they're not disclosing that they're being paid, which Instagram has Instagram and YouTube both have a paid ads button that it will show up in the top left corner of the screen, or it will show up that you've been paid for your opinions on this, or that you've been paid to review a product. Like, you are getting paid for this. So a lot of this stuff is not that big of an issue. I would assume after something like this happens, maybe X will put in a tab to where you can just select that this is, like, you can put on their paid promotion, because there's stuff that, like, where it would say sponsored or paid promotion or something like this, because like this, a lot of this doesn't make this whole situation didn't make sense. Obviously it was an inorganic campaign, because most people don't think you should be able to buy junk food especially on the right. You shouldn't buy junk food on welfare. And even, I guess, yeah, Riley Gaines said they offered to pay her. She said no. So there's a lot going on about this. But I would just say watch some of the posting patterns of people that you listen to. Because if they're talking about something that you like, because they do this with a lot of different stuff. So a lot of organizations, and I won't lie, I have worked with organizations to push policy positions, do videos on policy positions and stuff like that. But I won't push anything that I can't defend. And I would never push something that I don't believe. So, but there's a lot of people out there making money doing this stuff, and you just do what you can in some of these things, in some of this stuff. But I think just watch for people to post stuff kind of that they don't normally believe, and then just see what, if something comes, like if you push on it, ask them about their actual opinion on it. Because here, like I said, I'm not opposed to taking money to push policy positions or to even make posts like this. This is kind of the way that the influencer world works. It's kind of how most people get paid. What I don't like is if you push something that you don't agree with, that you don't believe in. I would hope that you guys would know, even if I'm getting paid to do something, I'm always going to say what I believe in, and I'm going to make the narrative about the issue that I agree with. I would never push any position or a product that I don't believe in. Like these people have. That's called selling out. And that's not the way that it is. Honestly, that is what grifting is. It's getting paid for an opinion that you don't actually have. It's getting money despite despite having a position that's different. It's counter to your position on an issue. That's like the definition of grifting. Like, we get people throwing around, if you even make money doing this type of stuff, then you're a grifter. No, people can make money doing this kind of stuff. It doesn't make them a grifter. Grifter gets paid, will change their position just to make money. We see this quite a bit. It's always been kind of well known, but this was one of the first times we've seen it in a massive campaign like this, to where people are pushing stuff that is clearly not a conservative talking point when it comes to this. And it actually was there to make MAGA look bad and make this look like it was an anti-Trump stance to have, when it's them that are trying to push the ban. It's almost trying to create a rift between people like RFK Jr. and Donald Trump, trying to bridge, push a gap between MAGA and Maha. So that's not good. Not good. But yeah. All right, y'all. That about does it for tonight's show. I thank you all for joining me. Again, I hope just watch my channel. Watch the feed on the channel. Hopefully, or watch any of my channels. That's why you should subscribe to me across all platforms, because we hopefully will have some pretty exciting news stuff coming up that I can't announce yet until I know it's for sure. But it will be posted under my community area on here, and it will also be posted on all my other platforms. So with that, if you haven't already, click that like, subscribe button. Follow me across all social media platforms, and I will see you next time.